Hi, and welcome to Digital Photo Mentor weekly YouTube live stream. I'm Darlene, and I am your instructor. I have created Digital Photo Mentor to help beginning and intermediate photographers like you, hopefully, how to take better photos and how to process better photos, which is what we're going to do in this live stream. As per usual, I've got some viewer and subscriber submitted images, and you can follow along as I edit them and show you my process for deciding what to do to an image, how far to edit it, and how to know when to stop, and so on. I'm going to show you a few specific things today. But before we get started, I just want to do a quick reminder that we are going to be changing our date. So because it's holiday week, next week we're not going to have a live, and we're going to be switching to Saturdays. We did take a poll and it was evenly split for timing. So we're going to pick the time that works sort of best across different time zones. And that is going to be Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So that's New York time. If you're in Europe, that's going to be late evening, about 8 to 10 p.m. Unfortunately, for you in Australia and down under, it is going to be in the middle of the night. So you'll have to catch a replay for a little while till we hit spring again. And in North America, it would be early afternoon. So make sure you mark in your calendar January 8th, 3 p.m. Eastern, or convert that to your own time zone. That's when we're going to be going live next. So we're taking a holiday break. We'll give you a holiday break, and we'll be back after the New Year. So today will be our last live broadcast of 2021. So without further ado, I'm going to go and grab my images, and I'll be right back. Okay, let me get myself to the small side screen here, and let's see who's in the house. Okay, we got our usuals. We got Ron. I'm not going to like you very much today, Ron, because we're going down to minus 25 to 32 for Christmas weekend. So you'll be on the beach getting sunburn, and we'll be getting frostbite. Stephanie, welcome. I'm hoping that Trish is here today because I have one of her images that I held on to from last week, but I've got some submissions from Mike Tendrip as well, and I don't know if he's here. Hopefully he'll catch the replay. And we're going to be talking specifically about noise in images today to start, because the images that he sent were shot at a fairly high ISO, but not super high, and I want to show you how to deal with that in a few different ways and how to minimize it when you're shooting as well. So if there's any specific questions from those of you that are here already live, fire them at me in the chat. As usual, Rob will be in the chat to help out and share some links to various different things. And also, I just want to show you, I give you a reminder that this is our last 24 hours to get any sales on the Luminar sale, because they have Luminar Neo and various other things on sale on Skylum right now until the end of the day tomorrow, I believe. So I'll just grab a link for that and pop that into the chat for you as well. So if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, okay, the chat over on Facebook should be over on the side or underneath if you're watching full screen. All right, so let me dig into these images. All right, so this is what Mike sent, and I've already done a bit of noise reduction on these, and I've got this up on the screen. Oops. Let me come back here. I've got the exposure information up on the screen so that you can see that as well. But what I want to show you is the difference between doing the noise reduction in Luminar and using a separate plugin like Topaz, which is what I used on these ones. Okay, so I've already done a bit of editing on his image. It was really dark. Okay, so if I look at the original, I'm actually just going to make a duplicate here so you can see his original. I'm going to reset it. So his original, if we look at the histogram, and if you learned a little bit about what our histogram tells us when you look at it, whether you're photographing or whether you're processing like this, it tells you where your exposure lies. Okay, so when you're looking at this, it tells me that the image is underexposed because you can see sort of a gap on the side right over here, right? Oh, let me turn my little pointer on. There we go. So you can see sort of a gap over on the right-hand side of the histogram. If you could please put the Why Your Snow is Gray article in the chat, please, Rob. I did get them the Luminar link. I know you were busy. So right here, it tells me that the histogram or the image itself is underexposed, okay? So let's go to the one where I corrected it. So I've corrected the exposure, and the lighting was a little bit odd on this one too. So I tried doing an auto white balance, and it kind of, it did this. I could try an eyedropper somewhere on here, which will give me a neutral color wherever I drop it, right? So you can see that the color is sort of, let's just call it wonky, right? So there's obviously some lights on him that maybe were colored. So I think they should probably be towards the warm side, right? But now let's zoom in and let's see what the real challenge is. Okay, I'm going to come into even more than that. So I don't know if you can see that on the screen or not. Can you see how grainy that is? Okay, so that's 3200 ISO, and because the image is underexposed, right, it's grainy to begin with, but because it's underexposed and I had to lift the exposure, it increases the amount of noise. So noise is caused by actually 3 different things. A lot of people think it's just ISO, but that's just one factor. Okay, so there's 3 factors that cause graininess in images, right? Does anybody know what the other 2 are? So I'll tell you in a moment, but I want you to see if you can come up with the others on your own. So I'll leave those with you, and I'm just going to type my answer in and be ready with it. Any guesses? I've already given you one hint, okay? All right, let me just compare. Okay, so if I want to do some noise reduction in Luminar, it's not the best, right? We could probably do a better job in Photoshop, but you can see what happens is if I just push this up, okay, all it really does is kind of adds a lot of blur. So I can add some noise reduction and some color noise reduction, and you can still see that it's still fairly speckly, but now the image is almost blurry. And then if I increase the sharpness, okay, now we've got some weird pixelation happening. Okay, make sure you use your masking slider when you're sharpening. And I'm holding the Alt Option key so I can see where it's applying, where it's white. Okay, so that's maximum sharpening. But look at the weird artifacts, okay, that I'm getting here. Let me see if I can zoom in even more. Right? Can you see those weird speckles on his face? It almost looks like hay or something is textured in. Okay, so that's not a good thing. So when you do too much noise reduction in Lightroom, you end up with just a blob, okay? And when you do none, you end up with overly grainy images. So it's kind of this dance you have to do. And I'm not a fan of sort of the way this grain is structured either from the Canon files, okay? Did anybody guess the other 2 reasons why noise shows up? Stephanie, yes, underexposed. And there's one more. So if you guys didn't get that, those are the things that will cause noise. Okay, so high ISO, underexposure, and also long exposure. So over 1 second, 2 seconds, and so on. So if you're doing astrophotography, you're doing a long exposure with a high ISO like 3200, and you will get some noise in your images. Okay, so that's it's impossible to avoid. Okay, but as much as possible, you want to get the exposure right, because honestly, that one will give you more noise than an image that is correctly exposed at a higher ISO. Okay, so this is what I did to the image after I pulled it into Topaz denoise. So I want to show you the difference here. So I'm going to undo the sharpening. Actually, let's compare the noise reduction and sharpening of Lightroom and compare it to what I just did in Topaz. And I'm gonna run this for you so that you can actually see it working. Okay, so the one on the left, oops, where did he go? I'm zooming in a little too much, I think. Let's just try 100%. Okay, so the one on the left is the Lightroom one, and you can see that it looks blurry and grainy. Okay, if I undo the sharpening, if I just turn that off, so I'm undoing the noise reduction in the sharpening, can you see the big difference there? Right, so the Lightroom one with the image on the left is Lightroom with no noise reduction. The one on the right is Topaz. Okay, so I was not able to achieve that same finished noise reduction in Lightroom at all. And Topaz is really simple to use. Let's see, did you miss anything, Rob? Yes, no, great. So get ready with the noise reduction article that we did where I compared different softwares. So the other image that Mike sent was this one. And let's take a look at the original. Okay, so another one at 3200. So 3200 is not super high in terms of ISO, but once again, the image was very underexposed. Okay, so if I reset this one, take a look at the histogram. Okay, see how dark that is? It's literally missing half of the graph. Okay, so what I did when I adjusted the exposure is I brightened up the whites, right, as opposed to exposure, right? If you've watched me do this before, right, if I try and pull the exposure up, it's going to have to be like 2 stops brighter, right? Now that's bringing up everything, whereas I can just bring up the whites here and spread out the graph, okay? So combination of a little bit more exposure and a little more whites gives me a better looking image, but look how grainy this guy is. Look at that. Okay, crazy amount of grain. It's also not super sharp on his eye, right? Or his mustache, right? Looks like the microphone maybe, but this is the kind of thing, this is what happens when you use a high ISO, right? There's also an article we have. Did you get that one, Rob? I wanted the article on noise reduction. And also there's another one we have on don't fear high ISO. Okay, so if you're in a situation like this where it looks like it's maybe an indoor concert or band or something like that for both of these images, so they had no other choice. You're using a nice fast lens or fast-ish with a 2.8, so large aperture. Ideally, if you have an even larger aperture, like a 1.8 or a 1.4, that's the time to use that lens. If you've got a nice 50, you're just going to have to get a lot closer with it, because the problem here, partly for exposure, is that reciprocal rule. Does anybody remember the reciprocal rule and what that means? Is you want to have your shutter speed 1 over your focal length, which in this case is 185, okay? Now, because he's also using a Canon 80D, which is a crop sensor, this lens here effectively is about a 280, okay? So if we look at this information over here, Lightroom will tell us that, right? So it tells us over here, this lens, focal length, 180, okay, it does tell us 185. Is the 80D full length or full crop sensor? I don't think it is. I don't think it's full frame. Okay, so it should give us approximation of like a 280 millimeter lens. So you really need your shutter speed when you're using this lens fully zoomed in to be about 1 over 300. Okay, so you'll get a lot of movement and camera shake when you're using a big long lens at that slower shutter speed. Okay, the IS will give you a little bit more to work with, so you could probably get away with, you know, maybe 100, 150, but 1 over 50 is kind of pushing it. Okay, so it's underexposed to begin with, needs more exposure, and in this case, he would have had to increase the ISO even higher. Okay, and that's what I'm saying. Shooting at 6400 ISO with the correct exposure is going to give you less noise than underexposing it at 3200. Right, now I did brighten this one a little bit more, so let's just see if I can, there we go, get these about the same. All right, so what I did was, again, I brought it into Topaz, and I'm going to run through one of these and show you how that's done, how easy it is. So when I zoom in, maybe not quite that much, look at the massive difference. Okay, oops, I got them backwards. Hang on. Okay, so left one is Lightroom, right one is Topaz. I thought something was wrong there. So you can see the grain on the left one. Look at the detail enhancement. Even in his hair, it's being pulled out, right? And the grain and the smoothness of his face. Okay, it's also trying to sharpen. Look at the microphone. Okay, look at the big difference on the background. Okay, in terms of noise, huge difference. Okay, can everybody see that? So what I did was I did a couple of my own images as a further example here. Okay, so this is one that I was shot at. Come on, zoom out. There we go. 5,000 ISO with my Fuji crop sensor camera. So this was with my Fuji X-T1 in 2016, obviously. Okay, now this one is fairly grainy, but when I zoom in, if I want to go to that same extreme, you could see that there's a lot of grain, but guess what I did? I actually added grain in the processing step when I added my vignette. Okay, so if I turn the grain off, you can see that there's actually not that much in the original image. So I actually chose to enhance the grain in this one because it went with the image, okay, kind of grungy. So I tried to do some noise reduction in here, I believe. So this is without. Okay, so here we go. This is without any noise reduction in Lightroom. And then the next one, that's again Topaz. So let's look at those side by side. Right. So left is Lightroom. And I've also added some sharpening. You can see that the details are sharper in Topaz as well. Right? Look at that. Look at the difference there. Look at the difference on the wall. Okay. So more detail, less noise with Topaz. Okay. Is that helpful? Okay. So when you have an image like that that's really noisy, to be honest, this one here, what I might do, and one thing you can do to sort of save your images, like if you don't have Topaz denoise, I would do a little bit of noise reduction here and give it some sharpening. But actually here, I probably might even turn it to black and white. I find that concert photos like this look really great in black and white. So let's just run with it, right? Now look at how much we're pushing the exposure, or I'm pushing the exposure here. I like to have lots of contrast in black and whites, like so. And then when I go down here in the vignettes area is where you'll find the grain. Okay, so it adds like a film grain. So I'm going to add some grain and just kind of go with it. Okay, you can increase the size of the grain and the roughness. Okay, now it looks more like the more you go and the rougher you go, you'll find that it starts to sort of look more like film grain. You see that? So I'll turn that off so you can see it. So that's the natural noise in the image versus film grain. Okay, so I prefer to have this kind of look, so it does look like more like a real black and white image with high ISO, right? Like a fast black and white film. So that's kind of what I would do with this kind of image. And I would do something similar with this one. Okay, because when you have something like this that has odd colors shifts because of the lighting, you've got a high ISO. If you can use a tripod in these situations, great. If you can use a flash, also great. And if not, try and get a faster lens. Okay, so like a 50 1.8 or an 85 1.8 would be a great concert lens if you're doing concerts. Okay, even if you have like a macro 102 f2. That would be a great lens as well. Means you do have to get a little bit closer, okay? Let's do an example and run one through Topaz, okay? So let's see. Okay, this is one here is one that I shot at 6400 ISO. So this is literally in a cave in Cuba, okay? So 6400 ISO. I have not added any grain, and I'm just checking to see if I did any noise reduction. No, I haven't. So I've done a little bit of sharpening with the sharpening slider here, But what I usually like to do is actually do the sharpening and the noise reduction in Topaz. Okay. So there's two products that Topaz has. One is Topaz Sharpen and one is Topaz Denoise. They both kind of have components of the other as well. So if you don't want to buy both, and I do think they're on sale right now as well. So can you put a link to both the Sharpen article, please, Rob, and the Denoise one again, which I think you already did. Okay. And if you check the links in there, maybe just get them the links for Topaz directly as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this or open this up. I'm going to open this up in Topaz. Yeah, so the sharpening is not great in here anyways. Okay. Let's see if I can do any better editing this. So it's been a while since I edited this one. I'm just going to give it another go here. Maybe warm him up a little bit. Okay, so it's a fairly contrasty image. The light is coming in from there. And what I could do is one of the new masking tools in Lightroom. So I use the select subject often. Let's see if it selects him, hopefully. Yes, okay. So I could brighten him up and make sure I keep his highlights down, brighten him up a little bit. And the other cool thing is that when you have the select subject that works like that, you can actually invert it as well. So if I want to select everything except him, I just click invert, okay? And now I can darken everything behind him. Look at that. Right? I can also lower the contrast or lower the texture and so on. Okay. But for now, I think I'm happy with see how the original, because the light is coming from the right-hand side here, the wall is really super bright. I wanted him to stand out. So I used a mask here. Okay, as a linear gradient, okay, which lowered the exposure and the highlights. And then I brightened him with this one. And then I darkened everything else with that one. Okay, so all in total, these are what the local adjustments are doing to this image. Right, so local adjustments, again, only apply to certain parts of the image. Looks like he's missing a leg, doesn't it? He's just got his knee. He's got his knee bent. So he's not missing a leg, trust me. Yeah, he has a leg. There we go. But he's got a lot of noise. Okay, so let's see if there's a better color here. Classic Astia. Oh, chrome was kind of nice. That's a better red. I like that. I think I'm going to go with chrome. I like that. Okay, so we've got a super contrasty image now. That's all right. We like that. Okay, so now to get that image, if you've already done some things in Lightroom, you're going to open Topaz as a plugin. So you're going to right-click, choose Edit In. Okay, and in this case, I want to do denoise. Okay, so I could also do Sharpen, and it has a noise element, and I'll show you that one as well. Right, you want to make sure you edit a copy. And just for ease and speed of working, usually I use a TIFF and ProPhoto and 16 bits. That is a higher quality export. Okay, so the higher quality export you start with, the higher quality you're going to get out of it. And just for speed of processing today, I'm using a JPEG 8-bit. Okay, so if you are using your raw file, always use the highest quality. So that means ProPhoto RGB, 16-bit file, and a TIFF. Okay. And you can set that up in your Lightroom preferences. I can show you that if anybody wants to know about that. Okay, so this is what happens when I'm going to do a before and after, I think. Yeah, okay. So I'm just going to get him in the middle here. So it opens up at 100%, and you can see there's not a lot of buttons, okay? So there's Denoise AI. AI Clear, which is a bit less, it has sort of less options, okay? So you're literally just choosing low, medium, high, and then it has low light, okay? So this is definitely a low light situation. So I'm going to try that, and then I'm just going to turn on the auto, okay? Now it lowered the remove noise, which I'm not happy about, okay? So I'm going to crank that one up a little bit. And I have the auto update preview set on. So every time I adjust a slider, it's adjusting and redoing the preview. Okay, so let's do a little bit less sharpness. Okay, so now I'm going to see before and after. And I've got this little slider here. Okay, so before, after. I don't see a lot of difference. But there's actually more detail in the wall here, right? I don't actually see a lot of noise in this image now that we have it in here. But let's try denoise AI. And let's just go max. Yeah, let's see what happens here. Okay, so that should be a before, after. Yeah, we're not picking up, even on his face, there's not a lot of noise because I went real high contrast on that one. Okay, oops. This is the annoying part of auto update. This is also why I chose to do a JPEG, because when I'm using a larger file, it takes even longer. So you can see that it is, looking on his neck, okay, it is reducing a lot of the noise, and it's doing a really nice job of it, and sharpening up his eyes. Look at the difference of his eyes. You see that? So it's sharpening with the enhanced sharpness and recovering detail. So it's doing a really good job. Once I apply it, I'm going to get this little progress bar across the top here, and you can see how long Topaz takes to work. So if you're using a really big file, if you open the original raw file, it does take a while to apply, right? So it's going to depend on your computer specs as well. Any questions about, while that's processing, is there any questions about computer specs or Topaz? Anybody, has anybody used Topaz? I'd love to hear from everybody. It's very quiet today. Ron, do you have your coffee and you're good to go over there? All right, let's see. Still processing, almost there, almost there. Okay, so then it brings us back to Lightroom. I don't think we're going to see a huge difference in this image, but let's take a look anyway and compare the two. Okay, so Lightroom is on the left. Okay, so you can see that there is a little bit more sharpness again on his face and some noise reduction as I'm moving it around. Let's look at the cave. Everything looks sharper, even the branches. Let's try another one because that one's got a lot of black. So apparently Ron has Irish coffee. Stephanie, you just got denoise and sharpen, still playing around. Are you using them as a plugin for Lightroom or for something else? Can I make the photos bigger? Oh yeah, sorry, I changed. Sorry about that. There we go. Here, I'll just take myself off. Okay, so I'll do that one again then. Sorry about that. All right, so you can see the difference. Where I'm seeing the noise is in here, and this may not have been the best example because in the processing, I made it so dark that the noise sort of disappeared. Let's see if I have another one that's got a lot of noise. Let's see what this one is at. Okay, so this is at 6400. So look at, actually, when I look at this image, this is shot on my Fuji XT, I think the XT1, and I don't see any noise in here. I'm not seeing a lot of noise. Okay, so it looks like I've done a little bit of noise reduction in Lightroom, right? But even if I turn it off, I see a tiny bit of noise in here. There's some on the barrel. Yeah, we see some there. Okay, so I'm going to turn this one off. So we're not having noise reduction there. And let's just see. I'm going to brighten this whole thing up a little bit. Okay. All right, let's see if we can see the noise now. Okay, so it's not that bad. So that's why I was kind of shocked that the noise at 3200 on the Canon 80D on Mike's image was much greater than what I have here on my Fuji image. So if you're watching this later, when you're in the sharpening panel, just keep in mind that when you sharpen, look what happens to the noise. Okay. So I ran, and what the images that you sent me were JPEG. So I ran the noise reduction software on the JPEG that I think had already been processed. Okay. And what Topaz recommends is not, okay, so this is for you, Stephanie, if you said you're doing it as a plugin. So don't add any sharpening. I'm going to get back on camera here. Don't add any sharpening. There's my X, or noise reduction in Lightroom. Leave that to Topaz. Okay. So do everything else. Get your image looking how you want it. Okay. Let's just see the original on this one. Okay. So it looks like I added a lot of contrast here somewhere. Where did I do that? Oh, I added a bit. No. Trying to see what I did here. Oh, I probably got a huge vignette on. Yeah, I've got a big vignette on. That's fine. Yeah, so I'm doing a vignette and probably a radial filter. Yeah, there we go. So one thing to keep in mind is that I added these filters prior to the new Lightroom. Okay, so radial filters that were added in the older version, whatever this is now, Lightroom 12 or something, it recognized that it was a radial filter and it applied the same thing, okay, a radial gradient. Here I applied what used to be called a graduated filter. Now they call it a linear gradient, and all those things still apply. Okay, so anything that you did previously with any masking, you'll now actually see them here sort of as layers. Okay, so Lightroom doesn't have layers, but it kind of has masking layers. Please share the link to the masking webinar, Rob, for people that missed that. And if you are interested in learning more about the Lightroom masking tool specifically, that's a great one. If anybody here watched that one and can tell everybody else what they thought of it, give us your testimonial on that one. Okay, so I'm just going to hop over into Topaz with this one. And I'm just going to lower this mask a little bit because I've darkened it too much, I think. There we go. That's better. So sometimes I go back and look at my own editing and update it as well. Okay, so right click. And now there's a couple of different options. Okay, so if you're doing some basic edits first in Lightroom, then you're going to go edit in and choose Topaz Denoise. Okay, if you want to work on the raw file, take it into Topaz first, then come back and do your basic edits in Lightroom. I recommend doing this sharpening and the noise reduction last. So do basic edits first and do what I'm doing, but you can do it the other way, okay? You can go export, and then where's my Topaz? Probably down here somewhere. Oh, I have way too many exports. Oh, Topaz is not here. Where is it? Apparently I cannot export the raw file to this one, so that's interesting. However, you'll notice that I have a Luminar Neo export. So there's just kind of a little tease, and I'll come back and show you that one in a minute. So we're going to do denoise Topaz. I'm going to do the full high-res version on this just to give you an idea of how much slower it runs. Okay, so I've got Lightroom running. I've got this live stream software running, and now I'm going to have Topaz running on a full high-res TIFF. Okay, I got to figure out how to turn this little thing off. All right, so let's position this. So I find that I want to position it someplace where I can see a nice before and after. I can use the split view. I like the split view with the slider, and it generally sort of does the same settings that you used last time. So it remembers. So I could try, I could just try auto and see what it does. Again, it lowered the noise and enhanced the sharpness, right? So that's what it thinks that I want to do, but now there's still too much noise left. So I'm not liking what it's given me under the auto. We'll just crank that one up. Okay, so now look at the difference in here. Okay, so this is where I'm looking at the noise, right, versus on this side. And I can do a bit more slider as well. So I'm going to do a little more detail. Let's take this to the nth degree here so we can really see, really put it to its paces. All right, so 100%. There's the before. You can see the noise in between the barrels. You'll see the noise mostly in the shadows. Okay, so look in the shadow areas. Look at how smooth it is now. But look at the sign on this barrel down here. Okay, so look at the sharpness as well. Look at the difference. Look at that. Okay, and I haven't put the sharpness up to the maximum, right? So I could even enhance the sharpness more and more detail. Let's just take it, like I said, to the max and see what Topaz Sharpen is capable. Sorry, know what denoise is capable of. All right, let's do it. Ugh. As soon as I move it, it's going to preview again. See, I grabbed the image instead of the line. All right, so there's the after, before. That looks pretty darn good to me, right? So I'm just going to bring the detail down a tiny little bit. And we're going to go with that. All right, now let's see how long that applies. Okay, so as you see the progress bar up at the top here takes quite a while. So while that's happening, okay. Denal, wow, what a difference. Yeah, Topaz is magical. The only other thing that I've seen that I've tested actually that even came close to Topaz denoise was actually On One Photo Raw 2022. However, I wouldn't buy it just for that. I did do a review of that software and I wasn't a big fan of it. You can find that one on my YouTube channel, or Rob can drop a link in there, right? But I found that the On One denoise did do a really good job. They do offer that as a separate plugin, I believe. So if you check out our review, there's a link to that, because I think you can just buy that one component. But if it was me and I didn't have any denoising software, period, I would just get the Topaz. Okay, so if you find yourself taking a lot of high ISO images, or you've got a lot of older ones, maybe from an older camera where the high ISO didn't perform as well. For example, I used to have a 5D Mark I or a 5D Classic, and the noise in that one was atrocious. So if you have a camera, an older camera, like I said, that produces a lot of noise, just pick up Topaz denoise. All right. Do you have the direct Topaz noise, Topaz links, please, Rob? And hi, back to Denal. Where are you joining us from, Denal? Okay, so now let's take a look at our barrels side by side. Oh, and by the way, this one here, this is wine barrels. And this one here, I believe, see where it says Judge? That is actually a kind of wine. So it's called the Judge, and it's a really good red wine. Florida, welcome to now. Much warmer where you are than we are. So yeah, look at the difference there. Even the amount of detail. So again, if I come down to this writing and that sign on the barrel, look at, you can see the wood grain even, as opposed to noise. Okay. So when you encounter an image that has a lot of noise like this, you have a couple of different choices. You can go the route that I did with the old sync and add some grain and make it look like film grain. You could try black and white and add some film grain, okay? Or if you want to get rid of it or minimize it, hop over to Topaz denoise. Okay? Let's see. So the other thing I wanted to show you today, do I have any of Stephanie's images? I think I'm still saving yours, Stephanie, because I want to do I'm not sure if you had one in the water. Do you see any of yours in here? Because I wanted to do a whole series of water. But if I've got one of yours, let me just look here. I think you're going to have to send us some more, Stephanie. So, Rob, if you could please put the link to submit images. We're literally running out again. This is all I've got left. So we really want to pick up a few more so that we can continue off in the new year. So send me some more, Stephanie, and we'll get yours into the next one in the new year. All right, so we've done with those. All right, so what I wanted to show you next is something that I did, and I sort of showed it really quickly last week. And I just have to find the images now. Where the heck are they? Sorry, I can't read. There we go. Okay, so I flashed these on the screen really quickly the other day, and I'll show you these again. So I did a photo shoot with some beautiful Indigenous ladies, and these are some of the prints that I made for them. And what I did was I made a little collage. Let me just get this guy off the screen here for a second. Okay, so I did a little collage, right? So I made this in Lightroom. So I'm going to show you how to do this. All right. I've actually I've got a project that I'm working on for a cousin of mine, and she wanted a collage for her office. Let me put this back on the screen. There we go. So she wanted a collage for her office. She was gifted an Indigenous hand drum, and she wanted something to go with it. So I've been working on something for her, and I've been working on that one in Photoshop. But I want to show you how you can make sort of a collage in Lightroom. All right. So let me just get my tabs back. There we go. Okay. So all you need to do is go to the print module, okay, if you've never used the print module before, and it comes with presets, just like a lot of other things in Lightroom. So there's Lightroom templates, okay, so you can do single images, and just you can see as I'm scrolling down, it's showing me the layout, okay. So there's a couple of different things you can do. I'm just going to select 4 images. You can do something like that, which is more of a contact sheet, okay. So I'll show you the couple styles. Okay, so single image or contact sheet means that if you select a bunch of images, it's going to put them all on one piece of paper. Okay, now as I've selected more images down here in the film strip, here, I'm going to get myself off the screen here so you can see. Oh, sorry. Okay, how do I get myself? There we go. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, lost my audio there. So when I selected more images in the film strip, it just added pages. Okay, now I have control in Lightroom as to do I want to zoom the images to fill the space, so it's going to crop them or not. Okay, do I want to add a border on the images? And you can set the amount and the color. Right, and then you have rows and columns. Okay, so now I've selected 10 images, but let's say I want to increase the number of rows and columns. Okay, so you could totally set how you make a contact sheet, right? So if I wanted to do a contact sheet of, these are all 32 images, okay, and I wanted to do a contact sheet of 32 images, I want to think about, okay, if I do 6 by 6, I get them all on one page, right? Like so. And then just to play with the sizing. And I usually leave like 0.05, something like that in between them. So you've got a spacing between, and the same between, I'm just going to use 0.1 for now because I can type it faster. Okay, so 0.1 inches between and from the edge. So now I've got a contact sheet, right? So I could print that or print it to an image. So that's what happens if I do zoom. It crops the images, okay? And I can then set, if I want to have, say, for example, the file name underneath, or if I want the date that they were photographed, or I could put the exposure, okay? So whatever I want, I can have a little caption underneath, and I can set the font size and so on. So then when you go to print, okay, I'll just print this to my downloads, for example. So contact sheet, I'm just going to call this contact sheet 1, okay. It's going to print this to a JPEG, okay. And I should have checked my print settings first. Okay, so it's going to make me an 8.5 by 11 because that's the size that I set up here. So that's basically A4 paper size. Okay, so it's exporting that as an image. Okay, I can also choose to print it directly to my printer. So I can just say, print this right out. Okay, and then when I hit this printer, it's going to come up with my print dialog box. All right, I'm out of ink, so I'm not going to do that. Okay, so now it's going to print the JPEG, and I'm going to show you. It's going to pop up in my downloads folder here in a minute, just so I can find it easier, right? So that's a contact sheet, okay? So you can set up how many you want to have on the layout, spacing, if you have a caption or something underneath, and so on, okay? The other thing you can do with the print layout, now I could save this as well, okay? So I can save the print setup. The other thing that I can do is save it as a preset. So I've got templates here and so on. So just like you have presets for develop, you could save this as a template as well. So I could save this as a 6x6 contact sheet, 8.5 by 11. Okay. I know that it's a 6 up by 6 across contact sheet. And then that just shows up down in here in my templates, my user templates. Okay. So now it's done exporting. And there it is in my downloads. Okay. So there's the file. Okay. Well, like so. The next thing I want to show you is I'm just going to go back here and unselect. Okay. I'm going to make a custom one. Okay. So let's say I want to make, I want to make an 8x10 horizontal. Okay. So I'm setting my 8x10. You need to set your resolution. Okay. So if you are wanting something to print, make sure that you set your resolution to 300 DPI and then set the inches. Okay. Because if you set it to 100, right, it's not going to give you a high enough print quality. And also make sure that your JPEG quality slider here is at 100. And then you can decide if you want to add a little bit of sharpening and so on. Okay. So I added low sharpening for glossy paper, or you could do for matte paper. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to change it to sorry, I was coughing. All right. So now I'm going to change it to, I should just put this like this here. I changed it to custom package, or you can do picture package. Okay. So picture package is different again, right? So picture package is of the same image, X number of images. Okay. So let me just give you an example here. Okay. So I can say, okay, I want to add a 2 by 2.5. So I'm adding images of this same one. Okay. It looks like with a white border as well. So I can make sure I can take off the border. There's the stroke. So basically I'm printing a package that I would then print this and then cut them apart. Okay. So a print package is 1 5x7 and 3 wallets on one piece of paper, something like that. Okay. So that's a package. All right. The custom one is where you add images to the page. So I make sure I got my 8x10. And then I'm going to add images to the page. So let's just see. Okay, I want these guys. So I'm just dragging up the thumbnail. And then once I get them there, I can change the stroke. I like 1 point stroke. And a photo border does that. Okay, so it kind of gives you see that? Oops. Aha, there's something I want to show you. Okay. So photo border gives you that sort of this white edge. See that? Remember the old photos with the white border? Okay, so if you want them like that, that's what you got, photo border. Okay, so I don't usually use the photo border. I usually use the inner stroke. Okay, now you'll see what happened when I resize the image. Okay, you can make it whatever size you want. Okay, but I kind of messed up the sizing. So if I can lock here to the aspect ratio, right? you can then resize and it will keep the aspect ratio. The other way to do that is just hold the shift key down when you're resizing. Okay, so it won't crop the image for you. Okay, so now I can just put that anywhere I want on the page. Okay, I can also choose sizes from here. Okay, let's see, what else do I want? Let's do this one. This is one of my favorite images. Okay, now this one I want to have sort of a standard size. Okay, now notice that I hit 4x5 and it added it to the next page, okay, because it said that doesn't fit. So I can just drag that back over here and then move them around, okay? So I can add, actually I might change that one to 4x6. Okay, so that's a 4x6. And if I want to add more 4x6s, I can just add another one. So let's put those in the corner. Now I've got this extra guy here, okay? So I could just delete it and drop the images that I want into those boxes, okay? You can also change the order, I believe. Let's see. Maybe not. Nope, can't change the order. So that one's underneath, all right? So that's how you can just move them around and create yourself a little sort of collage, right? I can also change the background color, I believe. That's something I haven't done. I usually do white background, but you can change that, I believe. Maybe not. Yes, background color. Haha, I knew that. All right, so I can make it black or change the color. Okay, so if I want a different color, or if I do this, right? I did a little quick thing there. So what I did was I went to the color. You see how it gives me the eyedropper? What I did was I clicked on it and then started moving it around the images. And once I moved it on the images, right, that's when it started picking up the color from there. Okay. So I could pick one of the images colors, and then this is a way to really sort of have your images blend and make them look nice together. All right. And then just print it out. So I could even have this one as my background image, for example. Sorry, I got this one on the bottom here. No, it will not let me move that one to the top. Isn't that interesting? So I might just have to re-add it. So if I want this one at the bottom, I'm going to have to change the size crop here to fit it. And then it can become my background, right? So I can use that as a background image, right? And then put the others on top, right? Something like that. So you can get really creative using some print layouts. So if you're not familiar with using these kinds of tools for, like, if you're not familiar with making this kind of a layout in Photoshop, it does come with rudimentary tools. And that's how I made the print that I showed you for the ladies. All right. Let's see. Do we have any questions? Yeah, Rob says we're working on herbal remedies. I think it's related to just mask wearing and winter, and it's dry indoors here, and it's just a constant little tickle. And the more that I talk, the more that it wants me to cough. I've given Ron something to think about for print options. So yeah, there's lots of things you could do with printing, Ron, and you can make it, larger, of course. So if you have a printer that will print large, or if you don't have a printer that can print large, remember you can print this to a JPEG, so you can make it whatever size you want. For example, you could make it 20 by 24, and then really play around with some interesting designs, right? You can, if you want more control, you kind of do have to go to Photoshop. Let me just show you the actual Photoshop layout that I'm working on for her. No ink. We got the same problem. I'm out of ink right now, and I got a piece of paper jammed in the printer, so we got to figure out how to get it off. Yes, green tea. I've been drinking elderberry juice. That's what I've got here is elderberry and honey and elderberry and whatnot, cough drops. So I'm covered. But I want to see if I can find this layout in Photoshop for you. Let's see what I've done recently. Let's see. There we go. So if this is something you're not familiar with as well, in Photoshop, okay, this is inside Photoshop. If you go to File, Open, it'll show you the last, I don't know, however many dozen or so images that you worked on, right? So sometimes that'll save you some time in finding one that you've previously just worked on. All right, so this is kind of what I'm making in Photoshop right now, right? Can you see that? So I started with a blank slate in Photoshop, and you can see I've got a couple of the same images. I've actually got some text overlays. So let me show you my layers in here real quick, because you have a bit more, well, you have a lot more control when you're doing something like this in Photoshop versus Lightroom. So could I make this in Lightroom? Yes, with some minor caveats. Okay, so I could put the images and the borders. I don't think I can make this one have a dark overlay and have the words stand out like this. It has limitations. I've also added drop shadows and things. For example, on the text, if I zoom in here, you can see that I've got a drop shadow. Oops. Doesn't want to go on the text. I've also got borders and drop shadows on the images. So it gives me the ability to move them around or resize them in here, or even replace an image. Right? For example, I considered placing a different one in here, or if I want to replace the TP. Right? So that's what I've been working on in Photoshop from there. Any questions about print module in Lightroom? I just thought it would be something different that we haven't talked about before. We're always talking about develop. And I do use this print module from time to time. It's not something that I use every day. But whenever I'm doing, sometimes I just want a quick contact sheet, or somebody wants to see, like the images. And if it's something that you're going to use again and again, just save the contact sheet. So all I have to do is select all the images, right? Go in here, choose the 6x6. And then of course I want to have the file name. So if I'm sending this to somebody, for example, I do my previewing a different way, but if I want to send this to somebody, okay, you can see that this got the file name, and then they can just pick the one that they want. I would normally put them on SmugMug, right? Okay. Ron's having Irish coffee. That sounds delicious. And even Rob learned something about the print process. So I know Rob makes some of our images for social media, and he uses Canva, which is another, it's an online design element that you can use. And I'll show you another one. How many people have the Adobe membership? Because if you have an Adobe membership, you actually have access to something called Adobe Spark, right? Has anybody ever used Adobe Spark or know what that is? Right? You have to have the monthly. Oh, it's going to ask me to sign in. Oh, there we go. I was going to say it's going to ask me for my Adobe password. You have to be paying the monthly subscription to have access to Spark. Okay, and you just log in with your Adobe password. Okay, and you can see that this is one where I actually played around with this poster in this Spark and played around with the design, and then I did it in Photoshop. I recreated this similar one in Photoshop. Okay. So I created, go away, go away. It wants to help me. I don't need help. Okay, so that's the kind of tentative design that I made and I sent to her, and we liked the direction that it was going. And I just put some black overlay over top here, and I went and recreated it in Photoshop. Let's see. Oh, Irish coffee for my cough. Well, that's not a bad idea, but not at this time of night. Maybe a hot toddy. That we could probably do. And I do have Scottish blood, so from here, are there any other questions? Because I think I want to leave the rest of these images for the new year that we have left in this editing. Where are we here? I got too many collections. I lost you. So these are what we have left in terms of images to edit. So I've got these few here, if those are any of yours. And I've got a few others back in here. Some flowers and some water ones that I was holding on to. Still looking to see if I have one of Stephanie's. No. AJ, Rita, Chris. Great. So do send me some more images because I'm running short. A lot of these I've done already, and I'm looking for some different ones. So remember to send us your images. Rob, if you could put that link in the screen again. And a reminder that we are moving to Saturday, January 8th. Let me see if I can just put up a little quick banner here. Okay, so our next live stream is Saturday, January 8th, 3 p.m. Eastern. Okay, so if you are in Europe, that's going to be evening, and Australia, that's going to be like middle of the night, unfortunately for you. Right, so that is our next one. Please submit images. I'd like to wish everybody the happiest of holidays, whatever it is that you're celebrating, whether that be Christmas or Hanukkah or Ramadan. I'm not sure if that is, I think Ramadan's over already, or any other traditional holiday based on your culture and where you live. I hope you have a great one, and we will see you in the new year. Take care.